I always think it must be a fairly nerve-wracking responsibility to have to look after these kind of sites on the British coastline. And in fact, it is the responsibility of English Heritage. A site like this, which is gradually eroding out of the cliffs, has got to be cared for and has to be thought about. What are we going to do about it and how do we plan it? And John Ette from English Heritage is with us on this shoot. It's a scheduled ancient monument, so we needed his permission, English Heritage's permission to work on it. And the issues surrounding a site like this, John, there must be, the entire English coastline must be full of nightmares really for you. Well, I don't know.
No, definitely. And of course English Heritage aren't a coast protection agency, so the reality is that we are quite restricted in terms of what we can manage financially with a site like this, but what we can do is offer a lot of our advice and expertise, and we have been very interested in the Maritime Survey as well, so we've been funding that to actually work out what the below ground remains are, because English Heritage responsibility goes out the full 12 miles now.
And we saw that fantastic, we were looking at a fantastic report this morning from Southampton University where they'd done sonar scanning and geophysical scanning of the lost town that's out there, and that was part of English Heritage's funding to get that work done.
Yes, definitely. And the real art here is to actually match the below water archaeology with the above ground surviving remains, because what we've got here is the last vestiges of the medieval town. So with the town ditch running through in front of us here, and then beyond that Greyfriars, which itself was originally out to sea and relocated because of the loss of the coast. So that's really where we come in, trying to help actually understand these sites so we can manage them better.
And it must be, when you think that we've actually got graves eroding out of the cliffs and things like this, and on top of that, a lot of these sites have got local people who are very keen to protect their monument and all the rest of it. You must get a certain amount of pressure from local people wanting you to do the right thing by their, which is a very precious monument to them, so you have to sit across that, I guess.
Always. I mean, it's a sensitive issue, the whole loss of the coast, and that's why English Heritage have been involved with something called the Pathfinder project, which actually, with the Environment Agency, is helping communities come to terms with coastal change and possibly coastal loss. And Dunwich is, again, going to be one of those sites that in about 60 years maximum will be lost entirely, and the corner that is immediately behind you has already been lost. So this is
actually slightly too nearly behind me at the moment. I keep thinking we might go down it.
Well, the wall has already been dismantled just before falling into the sea. So this is a pretty dramatic example of what we term now scheduled monuments at risk.
And how many sites do you have? Is there an approximate number of places like this around the country? I mean, do you have hundreds of them, or?
There's at least in our region, there's a couple of hundred which are actually in relatively
And your
close
region
proximity.
is the southeast?
The east of England.
East of England.
So
right.
in effect, we've got a couple of hundred scheduled monuments on our risk register which are within a dimension of the coast, which we're having to factor. And that could include, sites which aren't currently designated, such as Haysborough. We've got the very early Pleistocene deposits, which are actually highly significant, although they're not protected as such, but we're still involved in advising on those.
And if you didn't pick this up, presumably all that would happen is these things would fall into the sea, we wouldn't have a record of them, they'd be gone, and that would be it. We'd never be able to know more about these than we do at the moment.
Absolutely. I mean, once they're gone here, and I think the key thing is to try to evaluate them and actually then come up with ideally a strategy to investigate the sites before they go.
And that's kind of part of what we're doing today. That there's a huge ditch here that might be the town ditch, and you're interested in us putting an excavation across there. What are you hoping to get out from the work that we're doing over the next 3 days?
Well, given this part of the site is going to be the part that goes earliest, the time team's involvement in this part of the site will allow us to quantify the quality and the condition of the remains which are likely to be lost next. So it will allow us to come up with an earlier strategy that we might have done. We know the standing remains, might not be affected for 20 or 30 years or more even. But actually the reality is that these below ground remains are going to require some strategy, and the ditch that you've described, which is about to be sectioned, has only been uncovered in the past in a cliff face. So it's never been scientifically investigated to its base before.
And I think one of the things both John and I are hoping is that when we go down to the lower levels of that ditch, it might be that there we find the evidence that doesn't exist at the moment of this place from the Anglo-Saxon period. It's just possible the ditch could provide us with earlier material.
If we're very lucky, but that'll be a bonus. I mean, I think the real story here is going to be the last vestiges of the medieval town.
Right, and this is probably going to be the last excavations before this lot drops in the cliff.
This section here, quite possibly.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's kind of quite a responsibility that John and English Heritage have to carry, and I'm hoping that at the end of 3 days we can leave them with that bit of extra information, because once this lot goes, it goes and there'll be no chance of getting it back. So it's become really a very interesting site. It's a kind of rescue dig for us, as well as the standard 3 days archaeology.